Good evening, this is Mr. Wintermelon. So in the previous chapter of Nutrition in Plant, we have learned how does a plant undergo photosynthesis to produce glucose using the raw material of carbon dioxide as well as water. But how does the plant transport the water in the soil all the way up its stem into its leaf? It is such a tall order, isn't it? And after the plant produces the glucose, how does the plant transport glucose to rest of its organ so that they can receive the nutrients they need for aerobic respiration? All of this will be answered in this chapter of transport in plants. Similar to human, plant also have its own transport network. In the case of plant, it is the vascular bundle. In the case of human, it is our blood vessel. So, in the vascular bundle, it consists of two types of cells, xylem and phloem. So, we will learn more about these two cells in this chapter. So first, let us take a look at what we are going to learn in the chapter overview. In this video, you will learn about the vascular bundle, its structure, as well as the function. In the next video, we will learn how does the plant absorb water from the soil. And in the following video, we will learn about transpiration, which is essential for transporting water up the stem into the leaf. And both of these involve xylem. And for the last part, it is translocation, which involve phloem. So what we will learn in this chapter is this. You will learn how to identify the position and explain the function of xylem vessel as well as phloem. Phloem consists of two types of cell, the sieve tube elements or the sieve tube cell, as well as companion cell. And again, you will see this term dicotyledonous leaf. And as I have mentioned before, don't worry about it. You can just take it as any other leaf because they wouldn't test you on leaf that is not within your syllabus. So all the leaf that you have learned, all the structure and so on is just the structure of dicotyledonous leaf. And in your O level, if a leaf come out, it will be a dicotyledonous leaf. They will put the word dicotyledonous in the paper, and if you see it, don't panic. Just take it as any other leaf. So let us first start with identifying the position of the vascular bundle inside a stem. So let's say we have a stem and we chop it off. We will see a cross-sectional area that is looking like this. So there will be a layer of ring that is like an oval shape. And in this oval shaped ring, there's actually three types of cells. What is more important is only the two types, which is xylem and phloem. You will learn which one is xylem and phloem in a short while. But first, other part of the stem includes the epidermis, which is the outer layer. Underneath the epidermis layer, we have our cortex layer, which is not important. The center is called the pit. The pit can be used for storage of food, but again, it's not very important. Just know, most likely it wouldn't come out, but if it asks you to draw a stem and label, it might be good to know pit. But as I have highlighted in red, if you just want to label the outer layer, epidermis, it is fine because epidermis is something common and I thought you ought to know that the outer layer is called epidermis. Next comes the important part. The outermost layer is called the phloem, while the inner layer is called the xylem. Cambium is in the center, not very important, but if you really want to know, cambium can convert itself into either phloem or xylem. So it is something known as undifferentiated cell. That means it can differentiate itself into either xylem or phloem. So all of these three together will form the vascular bundle. And I think it's not very difficult to differentiate xylem as well as phloem. You can see that the so-called lumen of the xylem is a lot larger than the lumen of the phloem. So that is one way of telling which cell is the xylem cell, which cell is the phloem cell. You will also need to know the position of the vascular bundle in the leaf, which should be familiar to you because you have learned it in the last chapter. The difference between xylem and phloem is you can see that the xylem have a larger lumen as compared to the phloem. And one interesting thing is phloem have the pink color round thing that is in the middle. So make a smart guess, what is it? It is actually the nucleus. So phloem actually contains some living cell, while xylem is completely lacking in organelle. Basically, it's quite a hollow tube for xylem. For phloem, on the other hand, you can see that there's nucleus, but the lumen of the phloem is a lot smaller than the lumen of the xylem. And that is how you differentiate the two in the leaf. And another way of telling is xylem is normally on top of the phloem unless they go and turn the leaf upside down. But generally, xylem is on top, phloem is at the bottom. But if this is not clear, just look out for the lumen as well as nucleus. Phloem have a smaller lumen and some of its cells contain nucleus. So to help you better understand the position of the xylem and the phloem, you can see how important this is. We have a picture of the aphids that is feeding on a plant. Aphids, if you do not know this insect, you will learn it later on. They actually feed on the cell set of the plant. That means it is able to obtain all the sweet sucrose. And sucrose is a food, so it is transported from the phloem. Just bear this in mind, the aphids suck the cell set from the phloem. So let's say we have a plant down here. We have our phloem vessel as well as our xylem vessel. So you can see the position of the phloem and the xylem. It makes sense this way, that the phloem is on the outside so that the aphids can stick its proboscis inside, and it is not too deep because it is just right on the surface. So if they give us a cartoon diagram of a stem, the phloem is on the outside, xylem is on the inside. So phloem is on the outside, closest to the epidermis, while xylem is closer to the pit. So make sure you know where's the xylem and where is phloem when you are given a cross-sectional diagram of a stem. How about leaf? So if we look at a leaf, they will give you a diagram that looks something like this. And as you can see, as the vascular bundle turns into the leaf, it will inevitably cause the xylem to be on top and phloem to be at the bottom. So if you ask me, you really don't have to memorize this. Or the only thing that you have to memorize is the xylem is on the outside, which is not difficult because the insect is feeding on it. So it has to be on the outside. And once you remember the phloem is on the outside, you just draw two curves, as you can see from the diagram. Then you can easily see that the position of the xylem is on top. So just by drawing a simple diagram, of course your pot and so on do not have to be so fancy. You can skip the part of memory work. So what are some of the main functions of xylem as well as phloem? For xylem, it is to transport water as well as mineral salt from the root up to the leaves. So this is one directional. Xylem also provide mechanical support. So if you roll back the slide or the video, you can see that actually the cell wall of xylem is portrayed as thicker. And this is because of one of the material that can be found in xylem. For phloem, on the other hand, its function is to transport dissolved food in the form of sucrose. So as mentioned in the previous chapter, glucose is converted into sucrose before they are transported. Amino acid is also transported from the phloem, from the leaf to the rest of the plant. So this is two directional. For example, after the plant photosynthesize, have excess glucose, maybe it will transport to the root, and it can also transport up maybe to one of the fruit. And the process of transporting dissolved food is also known as translocation. So let us take a look at xylem. There are 5 main characteristics of xylem. First, they are dead, so it totally lacks protoplasm. That means there's no organelle, there's no cytoplasm, and so on. They are hollow and lack cross walls. That means a xylem cell that is on top and the xylem cell that is below, it is open so that water can easily flow through. Xylem is narrow. This is important for one of the factors that allows the plant to suck a bit of the water. They are laid with lignin, which provide mechanical support. Lastly, there are pits between cells that is beside one another. So what's the function of pits? I will explain it later on. So for the xylem vessel, some of the characteristic is dead and lack most of the protoplasm, such as nucleus as well as other organelle. And the function is to reduce resistance to water flow. It is also hollow and lack cross wall, as I have mentioned. There's no wall between the xylem on top and the xylem cell that is below. But of course they don't care because they are mostly dead. It is narrow, which allows capillary action. This will slightly be touched on in the next video. There is also lignin, which is waterproof to prevent water from escaping. It is very strong, so it provides mechanical support for the plant. And lastly, it has high tensile strength, therefore it is able to withstand the hydrostatic pressure of the water that is flowing up. And lastly, there's pits to allow lateral transfer of water. So the pits, you can see that there are many holes down there. They are the pits. So how does the pit function? So you can see this simulation of a stem. So we can imagine water molecules flowing up happily. This is when the plant is healthy and there is no injury. But what if parts of the plant is being chopped off? It will look like this. And if the water continue to flow through the same route, they will just escape into the atmosphere and the plant will lose additional water which it doesn't want to. So what can be done is the plant can seal off the cell, and because of the pits, you can see the water molecules can move from the left to the right. So the pits will allow the lateral transfer of water. As for phloem, it consists of 2 types of cells. The cartoon version will look like this, while the actual phloem will look like this. The first type of cell is called the sieve tube elements or the sieve tube cell. So basically the sieve tube cell are the area that is between two sieve plate. The sieve plate are those pink color things with hole. Now you might notice those single line that is like hair. They are actually not hair, but they are just used by books to represent reduced cytoplasm. Okay, that's about it. Don't worry too much. Then we also have our companion cells. Those are the cells that have nucleus. So they are all over the place, not difficult to identify. They have numerous mitochondria so that it can detect the direction where the food is flowing. So the main characteristic of phloem is that the sieve tube elements, they are actually thin or very little cytoplasm. It lacks most organelles such as nucleus as well as vacuole. You can see that it's really hollow down there in the diagram below. There are pores that are called the sieve plates. So those pores, that is the remnants of the cells that were still alive. They actually have many holes so that the water can flow through it easily. Then there's also companion cell. They have nucleus as well as a lot of mitochondria. So for phloem, it have degenerated protoplasm or very little cytoplasm. This is to reduce resistance to the flow, to reduce the resistance to the phloem sac from flowing. Same thing as very little organelle. Nucleus in the companion cell, this one is to decide whether which part of the plant requires the food, so it will transport sucrose to that part accordingly to which part have a higher demand. So inside the companion cell, there's also abundance of mitochondria. This is to provide energy to control the direction where the food or the sucrose is flowing to. So this will be all for the location as well as structure and function of the vascular bundle, the xylem and the phloem.